Hello, everybody. Good morning. Um, my name is Gabriel Garcia. I am the community outreach educator for the Children's Advocacy Centers of Cameron and Willacy County, also known as Monica's House and Maggie's House. Welcome, everybody. I really appreciate you all being here, whether you're here live or later on watching this video for educational purposes through our Facebook or any other platform that we have it on. I just really appreciate you joining us. We're here to talk to you guys today about reporting practices when it comes to suspected child abuse, whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, and things like that. Now, there are a lot of different signs and things like that when it comes to suspected child abuse. Obviously, we want to be very vigilant when it comes to child abuse cases. Us as a CAC, we believe that every child deserves justice and deserves a voice. Unfortunately, a lot of those children are frightened, intimidated, sometimes even embarrassed when they're going through, these cases of child abuse. So they may not feel comfortable coming forward themselves and confident coming forward themselves. But that's why we, as advocates, we as trusted adults in their life, have that responsibility to speak up for them when they're not able to speak up for themselves. Um, we at the Children's Advocacy Centers, for those of you who do not know, we are a nonprofit agency who works with child abuse victims ages 2 to about 18. And we work with cases from physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, and also children who have witnessed some certain crimes, such as if a child witnesses a suicide or if a child witnesses a homicide, things like that. What our agency does is we conduct what is known as a forensic interview. So one of our specially trained staff members will sit down with the child and interview the child in regards to that suspected case of abuse to get as much details about the case, about the incident as possible. And that interview is recorded and then given to investigators to assist their investigation as it moves forward. We work with our partners in Child Protective Services, law enforcement all over Cameron and Willacy County, sheriff's offices, district attorney's offices. We also work with our partners such as Tropical Texas Behavioral Health, Palms Behavioral Center. Also, we work with agencies such as our partners over there at Sunny Glen, which you guys can get some more information on our previous video, on our previous series last week. We actually had Mr. Joseph Albury of Sunny Glen come in and join us and speak to us about what Sunny Glen provides to the children of our community. It was a really great presentation, and we really appreciate Mr. Joseph Albury for joining us and helping us kind of launch this new platform that we're going on together. So we really appreciate that, and we invite any other nonprofit and any other agencies that are willing and wanting to spread their message and spread their services to our community to join us and to reach out to us because you know, we're we're going down this road, down this journey of these mini series as a way to spread as much awareness as possible. And what better month than the month of April, it being Child Abuse Prevention Month? So we're here today to speak mostly about mandatory reporting of child abuse. Again, our agency works with children of all ages and of all cases. To give you a little bit more details about the services that we provide before we get to the reporting practices, our services that we provide the forensic interview, which is conducted by one of our staff members on site, depending on where the incident of child abuse did occur. The child will either be interviewed at Monica's house, which is based in Brownsville, and Maggie's house, which is in Harlingen. We have both houses to serve as many children as we can. Unfortunately, we serve roughly about 2,000 children a year, depending, depending on the year. But that's an average of how many children we actually do interview at our sites. And the names Monica's house and Maggie's house did not come out of thin air, unfortunately. Monica's house was our first house that we opened in Brownsville in 1998, and that was due to the death of a child by the name of Monica Castillo, and she was 4 years old. Her death occurred in 1996. Unfortunately, she passed away due to physical and sexual abuse at the hands of her own mother at the time. Now, when this death occurred, obviously, it shakes the community. And fortunately, here in Brownsville, we had some very active community members who were impacted by this child death, and they decided to open a children's advocacy centers, which were popping up pretty gradually in Texas at the time. And Monica's house became the first children's advocacy center here in South Texas. We opened our doors in 1998 here in Brownsville, and we named the house Monica's house as a dedication to Monica Castillo, who, her death could have been prevented. It's preventable, it's avoidable. And that's also why we're here today, because reporting and mandatory reporting quite possibly could have avoided a situation like that. We will never know. But that's why reporting is such a huge valuable asset for all individuals to have in a community, not just, educators, not just, um, you know, uh, caregivers, people who work with children. Everybody in our community should have the ability to report child abuse, suspected child abuse, when they do suspect it. And we will never know if there was anybody in Monica's life who could have and maybe should have reported that suspected abuse, but unfortunately, it did not come in time. And Monica Castillo unfortunately passed away at the age of 4. And Monica's house was dedicated in her honor. And so we opened Monica's house in 1998. Unfortunately, that same year, we had another child death. And this was the death of Maggie Dittman. And she was 2 years old at the time of her death. And unfortunately, Maggie passed away due to shaken baby syndrome at the hands of her babysitter at the time. Now, unfortunately, this case was also, avoidable. Caregivers should be, taught, how to care for children properly and not be so neglectful and things of that nature. And fortunately, Maggie's parents, Mr. Mark Dittman and Dr. Kathy Dittman, have been very vocal about shaken baby syndrome and trainings for caregivers and things like that, mandatory trainings for caregivers, so that way this can be avoided in the future. And they've been very vocal. They've been amazing child abuse advocates who have supported our agency and allowed us to name our house at that time in San Benito Maggie's house in dedication to Maggie Dittman. And so Maggie's house was opened, and our houses stand to serve the children of Cameron and Willacy County. And we've been going strong for about 22 years now, and we're very happy with the amount of children we were able to serve. Unfortunately, having to serve these children, but we're very happy to have the staff with us who are dedicated and passionate and love their work, love to serve these children, and to be able to help these families as much as they can. So we also provide free therapy services for the children and for the families that we see through our facility, and we provide family advocacy. Our advocates assist our families in the process that they're going through with Monica's house and Maggie's house, and also assist them with community resources, trying to give them as much assistance as possible, and also gather information regarding the family dynamic, and how the family can be assisted, and things of that nature. So we also provide the educational services where I go into our community, and specifically I go into our school districts. I teach a personal safety presentation to elementary level students, third, fourth, and fifth graders at this time. I teach them personal safety rules, basically rules to learn, to recognize abusive situations, to recognize when they're being taken advantage of, and try to avoid those types of situations. And I believe the curriculum that we're using, which is an evidence based curriculum, has been pretty effective in my time here. I want to say from my experience that the children are, for the most part, pretty engaged in the conversation, and in the presentation of this topic. It is it's a rough topic for some parents, but we I encourage any parent who has any reservations regarding this presentation to reach out to me personally, and I'm always willing to walk parents through the presentation to let them know that nothing inappropriate is being discussed. It's all in terminology based on their grade level, so that way I can speak to them based on their cognitive mindset, basically, and just to kind of get the point across as clearly as possible to these children, because I have had instances after presentations where children have come up to me and made an outcry of abuse because of what what they heard finally clicked in their head that what they're going through is not a comfortable situation, and they may be in an abusive situation. So so that is one avenue when it comes to education. There's so much more education that happens, whether it's to community members, different organizations, different agencies, parental involvement. I speak to parents as well, so things of that nature, just trying to educate the community as much as possible in regards to this topic, because it starts with the community, and being able to recognize the situation that some of these kids are in. And when community members are educated and discuss this topic, openly, we can then be able to assist these children a lot better. We can't keep, tiptoeing around this issue because it's not going anywhere. It's unfortunately only getting larger. And of course, the internet and access to the internet and things like that for these children is not helping the situation. There's cases of online solicitation, and sharing and distribution of different inappropriate things that these children are working with. And so we're moving on ahead, and here I'm going to share right now. I'm actually sharing this information for you guys. I think it's very important that we talk about 10 facts about child abuse. Most of you may already know, but the purpose of these miniseries is to educate those that may not know, or may be curious. And all of this information, you will see the sightings on the right hand corner right there. They are from the nationalcac.org. They have great information, and on different topics and things like that. And I'm very very fortunate to have all of this information and all of this all of these things to be able to share with you guys. And they're all open to public. They're all public information, so you can go ahead and visit these websites if you'd like to get more information on it. There's tons of information there that unfortunately we're not going to be able to get to in this short amount of time today, but I'll try to go through these with you guys. So, 10 facts about child abuse. Number one, child abuse happens in every part of society. I get that a lot where, in daily conversations with people where they tell me their assumption, their misconception is that, only these people get abused or only those types of people get abused. And that is not the case. Child abuse does not discriminate. It happens in every socioeconomic background. It happens with every race. It happens with every culture. It does not discriminate. So rates of physical abuse and neglect are affected by socioeconomic status. So that is, a misconception. It is child sexual abuse perpetration, victimization that occurs in all parts of in all parts of society. So again, we have that misconception that child abuse, only happens here and there. It does not. It does not discriminate. It can happen anywhere. Number two, children are usually victimized by someone they know. Now, that is a fact that unfortunately we know all too well as advocates, and we try to share with our community. And that is one of those facts that can bring upon some feelings of denial for a lot of individuals when I say that to the community presentations, specifically with parents in parental involvement presentations that I conduct, because unfortunately a lot of the perpetrators in our cases are, stepfather or stepmother, or things like that. It's somebody that the child knows, somebody who has access to the child. So 91.4% in 2019, 91.4% of victims, all types, were maltreated by one or both parties. Other perpetrators known to the victims included foster parents, other relatives, neighbors, and daycare providers. 90% in instances of child sexual abuse, about 90% of victims know their abuser. Now, that's a sobering fact, but it's needed to be discussed. These children know their their perpetrators. It is the easiest way for the perpetrators to conduct their or to perpetrate their abuse is to get to know this child and to have access to this child and to have the trust of this child. And that's another misconception that we need to kind of shatter in in our overall general discussions with the community, is that unfortunately these perpetrators are well known to these children most of the time. Number three, children rarely tell someone they are being abused. Now, I'll just read forward before I get into my speaking. Research has found that most child victims delay or never disclose child sexual abuse to friends, family members, or other authorities. Now, this happens for could be for a lot of reasons. Like I said up top, it could be fear of the perpetrator, it could be, embarrassment, it could be um self blame. A lot of these children feel like they may have done something to either deserve the abuse or invite the abuse, things like that. And that's also where the education comes in at the school level, is reminding them that no matter what they did not deserve to be in that abusive situation, in that abusive environment. But of course, because these perpetrators have access to these children and have their ears and act as a trusted adult to them, they may convince them, they may manipulate them into believing that they deserved to be abused. So why would they speak up? Why would they share that? So children, children rarely tell someone that they are abused for many reasons. And you know I do get a lot of questions when it comes to child sexual abuse. That is, the majority of our cases come from that type of abuse, child sexual abuse, and the majority of those cases are female victims. And I always, in my presentations, I always make sure to preface that with, that is just the numbers that we have that tell us that females are more likely to be abuse victims of child sexual abuse, but that is not necessarily the case. A lot of the times when male victims of child sexual abuse are abused, they, more than other victims, will refuse to come forward because of that stigma, because they may feel that, you know that whole, what our culture does with the machismo and things like that. These children, being a male child, they may feel like they need to suck it up. Or if it's child sexual abuse with the perpetrator being a male, they may feel that stigma of, oh, does that make me, homosexual, or things like that. And we see that a lot from a lot of these children. And and that is also another misconception, is that these children should not feel embarrassed coming forward, or that they did something wrong. So that is our number three fact. Our number four fact is, it is extremely rare for a child to lie about sexual abuse. Less than 10%. False allegations of sexual abuse by children and adolescents are statistically uncommon, occurring at a rate of 2 to 10% of all cases. So this is a question that I get a lot as well, from community members, is, well, don't children lie? Well, sure, but it is not our role as a reporting party to make that decision on whether the child is telling the truth or telling a lie. Our responsibility is to report suspected abuse. It is the investigators' responsibility to investigate that allegation. And so I always try to express that to community members, that it is extremely rare for a child to lie, especially about child sexual abuse. Number five, medical evidence is rarely discovered after a child discloses sexual behavior. Medical evidence is found in less than 5% of substantiated child sexual abuse cases. So that's number five. Number six, while all types of abuse are possible in the home, child neglect is more common than sexual abuse. Child neglect is the most common type of abuse experienced in the home. Okay, so we'll move on to number seven. Children who are sexually abused are not destined to continue the cycle of of abuse as adults. Sexual abuse victims rarely go on to become perpetrators of sexual abuse. So, that's maybe another misconception as well. Does it happen? Sure, but that's not always the case. And that's a misconception that we need to shatter. Number eight, men and women are both capable of sexual abuse. Research estimates between 10 and 20% of substantiated child sexual abuse claims are perpetuated by females. This is another a common misconception as well, whether, female, male perpetrators, more, obviously it's going to be a male. That's a misconception. Female perpetrators are common as well. And that's also something that's a misconception that needs to be shattered. Now, that's also, I believe, yeah, number nine. Let's see. Boys and girls react in similar ways to sexual abuse. The severity of the traumatization among male victims of sexual abuse is equal to that of female victims. Again, this misconception of, of, well, males are more likely to perpetrate girls, will react more to abuse than boys. That is not that is not accurate. That is obviously not factual. Boys and girls can have the same reaction and trauma to any type of abuse. Now, it's a case by case basis. Every child is different, but you cannot split it by gender. That is just a very common misconception. And us as a society, we need to stop doing that, because boys are just as likely to have a very severe reaction to trauma as a girl may have. And again, overreacting to that, maybe as a parent, you see your male child with this overt reaction to trauma, and because he's a male, you try to suppress that. That can be very harmful for that child. And so that's also, a consequence of that misconception. So that's something that we need to shatter. Number 10, children with disabilities are more likely to become victims of abuse than children without disabilities. Children with disabilities are 2 to 3 times more likely to experience child sexual abuse than children without disabilities. Unfortunately, it's just the vulnerability of the factor, and the access that some of these perpetrators have with victims who are disabled, because of their vulnerability, and because they may rely on another adult for daily activities, or care. it Perpetrators have more access to them, and also children with disabilities may have even more obstacles coming forward, whether it's through because of lack of communication, or lack of credibility, things like that. And now, right. So yeah, I am getting comments, so I'm kind of reading them as I go. And you guys can see, these comments. I really appreciate everybody for sharing their experiences with things of this nature. It's never easy, and like I said, it's case by case basis. And this is an issue that we're not going to solve tomorrow, but we need to start today in actively trying to solve it. And one of the ways is through education, and is through educating others, and is through speaking about it and discussing it. It's not an easy topic to discuss. It's not an easy topic to express your experiences from. So we always appreciate everybody expressing their experiences with these unfortunate issues, because it is through that discussion and that narrative that we come up with solutions. And unfortunately, this topic still needs to be talked about at this point. Now, I do want to go on to the next graphic, which I believe is gonna be let's see, the responsible. Let me see if I can pull it up. Yes, yes, that's it. So this is another graphic that I got. So a safe childhood is an adult responsibility. Report abuse if one, you suspect abuse, you witness red flag behaviors, like crossing a child's boundaries, but don't have hard evidence of abuse. Also, let me see if I can. Give me 1 second. Oh, so I want to try to pull this up on my end. Okay, there you go. So, You suspect abuse, you witness red flag behaviors like crossing a child's boundaries, but don't have hard evidence of abuse. So be an active bystander by intervening. Yeah, it's down there by intervening with the offender on the child's behalf. Describe the behavior, set a limit, move on, right? Two, monitor the situation in case the offender keeps crossing boundaries. Now, if they do, number one, remain calm and don't overreact. Showing anger towards the offender or asking leading questions may distress the child and discourage them from further sharing. Now, this is something that I believe is common and is run into a lot when it comes to anybody in a position of suspected abuse, where your first instinct, which is very common and very understandable, your first instinct is to ask questions. It would be my first instinct, as you know, if it was happening to a family member of mine, I would probably want to ask as many questions as possible. The problem with asking questions is just that it stresses the child. It Asking questions about suspected abuse, it automatically, brings up, it resurfaces that trauma for that child, and you're risking them shutting down and putting up those walls, and you're risking not getting the intended answers and intended reaction that you wanted at first. So if you suspect it, just try not to overreact. I know it's easier said than done, but overreacting can really, I mean, we all know children uh react to our moods. And if we are in distress, and if we are showing anger or showing, you know um just pure anger, this child is gonna feel scared. So we have to try to remain calm as much as possible. um Now, approaching the offender, I feel like this is a tough one, because automatically your gut instinct is to find the offender and either either you know chastise them, scold them, for lack of a better word, um, ask them questions, get after the offender, things like that. We'll say that. Your gut instinct is to do that. Do not do that. Don't approach the offender. It doesn't lead to anywhere positive. It doesn't lead to anything productive. Um, what we can do is number two, offer support by listening and comforting the child. The most important words you can say are, I believe you, and it's not your fault. Again, reassuring this child is key. Just try to stay as calm as possible and listen. Um, you know, our forensic interviewers, their interviews are special because they allow the child to tell their own story by not asking leading questions and not putting words into the child's mouth. That is what is so special about what our interviewers are capable of doing. It's not easy. It's a very specified um, type and skill, really. You have to be very skillful to be a forensic interviewer, and our forensic interviewers are amazing. That's, they get training. They get training annually, every single year, multiple trainings that they go through to be able to speak to this child and ask the right questions, um, and to get as much details about the abuse as possible without leading the child, without, stressing the child out, things like that. They That, that's their job. So leave the questions to investigators and to the forensic interviewer if and when the child gets to that point. Again, you as a reporter are not an investigative, entity. Don't try to investigate the crime as it is. As much as we want to, we leave that up to investigators. So just offer your support as a reporter. Just offer your support. And then number three, report, contact the police and your state's child protective services. Again, our child protective services officers do their job very well. They try to assist these children and these families as much as possible. Our investigators are amazing, and they're our partners, and we support them and they support us. We all try to work together. We all are a large, chain, and each of us are those links in that chain. And we all have a specific job that we try to do for these children and for these families when they're going through suspected abuse. So, contact them and trust them to attempt to get as much details about this suspected abuse as possible. Now, does it always go the way, reporters want it to go? Maybe not, but again, put in the effort. It's always better safe than sorry when it comes to suspected abuse. Report them when you do suspect it. And we can go up to the option if you discover suspected abuse. Now, you witness a child being abused, someone tells you about an incident, or you find photo and video evidence online. Now, this is common for somebody to discover the abuse firsthand. Now, again, immediately just try to remain calm and go through the steps that we just went over with, remaining calm, reassuring the child that it's not their fault, offering your support by listening, and of course, reporting as much as possible. Now, photo and video evidence that can go a long way in an investigation. So I would just suggest, obviously not tampering with any sort of evidence of that nature. Keep it and notify investigators as soon as possible. That is becoming more and more common for these children to be either solicited by perpetrators online or even sharing inappropriate information with children of their own age, older individuals, and then those things get shared by other individuals. And now we have, unfortunately, distribution of inappropriate images, things like that, which ultimately is child pornography, and we see many cases like that. So digitally, cases are becoming more and more of that nature. So I always encourage families and encourage parents to be vigilant when it comes to understanding their children's internet habits. That is not easy. I mean, parents have enough to deal with every single day than to keep up to date on different apps, different games, different trends, things like that. I know it's tough, but it would help because these children know more about your phone than probably you do. Unfortunately, they've grown up with it. They grew up, they were babies holding a cell phone. We weren't. So they know how these things work better than we do. But unfortunately, that comes with perpetrators having almost unlimited access to these children. And so, I mean, step number one, just learn privacy settings. Very simple. All parents should know their privacy settings on any app. Learn your geolocation settings, whether, Snapchat is sharing your child's geolocation. People can find that out. So be very vigilant when it comes to that. The cyber age is they grew up in it. It came upon us, and we're just catching up. So catch up to your children, and catch up to these children and their habits, because they're using TikTok. They're sharing videos almost daily, or watching videos almost daily, sharing it's a madhouse when it comes to information that these kids are sharing with each other. So um, a lot of it's positive, a lot of it can be negative. The internet is a minefield of perpetrators, unfortunately. I'm not trying to scare any. Well, maybe I am. It's just be vigilant. Just be careful. There's a lot of stories that we hear every single day as a staff. So, and I only hear a portion of it. Our staff are amazing for hearing what they have to hear on a daily basis, but a lot of it has to do with online, solicitation and the digital age. So just be vigilant as reporters, as parents, as uncles, as aunts. Be vigilant. Now, a child discloses abuse. A child reveals to you that they have experienced sexual abuse or are currently being abused. Again, remain calm. Try not to ask questions. If the child wants to disclose to you more information and keeps going with this information, that's great. You don't have to interrupt them. Let them speak, but try not to steer the conversation in different venues or different areas. um, don't put words into your child's mouth. If they haven't named the perpetrator, don't play the guessing game. Don't say, well, was it this person? Was it that person? Was it this person? Where did this happen? Did it happen over there? Did it happen over here? Don't play the guessing game. Let the child divulge the details as much as possible, because that adds credibility to the story. Because once the investigation starts, and the investigators ask you, oh, okay, well, the child told you that it happened at this location, and then you tell the investigators, well, no, I kind of asked him, well, did it happen here? And he or she told me yes. Well, that adds a layer to that information that is difficult to get around. So let the child divulge that information for you. And of course, let the investigators do their job and investigate the suspected child abuse. I am running very over time. Okay, so yes, so that is all very great information. Again, all of this is public information. Reach out to us if you can't find this information online, but it's very good. We can move on to the next one. The next one should be mandating mandated reporter. Any adult professional who works with children legally responsible for reporting suspected or disclosed abuse. Now, again, now in some states, all adults are considered mandatory reporters. Now, just keep in mind that a lot of educators are mandatory reporters, and we are working very, very closely with our school districts. I do want to give a big shout out to our school districts that I work with. I work with every single school district, some more than others, obviously. Um, but I know Brownsville Independent School District has been very accessible and very open to the curriculum that I teach to the lower grade levels. Um, the guidance and counseling administrator, Miss Garza, she's been amazing when it comes to getting me into the classrooms and going down the path of making the child abuse prevention curriculum and personal safety curriculum mandatory for all children. As of right now, actually, as of this past year, we're steering. Previously, we would have to have parental permission for the child to have my presentation. Um, Now, I would get a lot of questions when I adopted this role, or when I came into this role, about how, well, if the parents need to sign a permission slip, wouldn't they just not sign it if they're perpetrators? And really, I didn't have a good answer for that. It was very true. If the parents were perpetrators, obviously they're not going to want their child to sit into a presentation about personal safety and disclosing abuse. So, luckily, our agency is steering away from the permission slips and trying to get every single school district to make our presentation mandatory across the board. No permission slips needed. Every child should hear this information because it is not inappropriate, as a lot of parents may think. There's a misconception that we're talking about, sexual education and stuff like that. We do. It's not a sex educational. It's not a sex education presentation. What I do is personal safety. So there's that misconception. So we're trying to make it mandatory so that way all children are able to disclose. And a lot of the disclosures come from educators and mandatory reporters, which as all of you know, which is why we're here right now, is this year has been very interesting and very different, and you know it's been hard for a lot of individuals, and for a lot of these children who are going through suspected abuse by a perpetrator who they may know. It is very it's very sad to think about that these children may be at home with a perpetrator, and since they don't have a trusted adult around them, or they're in fear, they won't disclose that suspected abuse. So so these children are not able to come forward. Our numbers decreased. Our outcry numbers decreased this past year in 2020 because of that fact that these children are at home and they don't have these reporters, these educators to come to. You know, this the children being at home and not on campus. It's for a good reason. We want to keep these children healthy and safe, and these educators as well healthy and safe because of this health crisis that we're going through. It's understandable, but just one, that's one negative consequence of it, is that these children are not able to make the outcries that they used to. So we are suspecting that our outcry numbers will increase. They have steadily been increasing. We're still seeing. I mean, we never stopped seeing children. We were still getting a lot of outcries. They just dipped a bit when the health crisis started. But well, we are seeing our numbers kind of peak up to where they used to be, and we're suspecting an even more increase as these children gradually start getting back on campus, and their mandated reporters are there for them when it comes to educators, counselors, school nurses, basically anybody who is on campus with these children are able to hear these children out. So again, as a mandated reporter, these are details that you try to gather: the child's name, address, name of the child, the names of parents, guardians, the type of abuse, the name of the person committing the abuse, things like that. Now, again, if the child says this information, great. Write it down. Be prepared to report this type of information to the proper authorities for sure. Now, the best practice is listen to the child and only ask open-ended questions instead of leading questions, which could cause further harm. Again, don't investigate for physical signs of abuse. Don't investigate, period. Just, ask open-ended questions. Will keep telling me about that, or tell me more about that, things like that. Just very open, very vague questions. And again, don't make false promises to the child. That's a big one, such as keeping your conversation secret. Trained professionals need to collect facts and details, and this often includes talking um, with the child. Now, making false promises is a hard area to stay away from. A lot of the times, your instinct is to promise this child that the perpetrator will be caught, that they won't have to see this person ever again. Things like that. Those are promises that you really have no control over. There's a long investigative process, and it's not a fun process for these children, and for the families, but it's a necessary process to ultimately get this child out of an abusive situation. So we try not to make false promises to these children. Most states require that the person with reasonable suspicion should make the report, so don't delegate the task even to your superior. You are what is called an outcry witness as soon as a child makes that outcry to you. So you are responsible in making the report. I have had instances where a child comes up to me at a school after a presentation and makes an outcry. So I immediately make that report. And, I drop everything else, all my presentations, and make that report as soon as possible with as many details as I was able to gather from that brief conversation, and then report as soon as possible to your local law enforcement agency, child protective services, or both. Now, try to keep that in mind, that the services are here for you. Our services, child protective services, just reach out to the proper authorities. Police, law enforcement, child protective services, reach out to them. I do always try to stress that our agency is not an investigative agency. That's also a misconception, that maybe we investigate abuse. We do not investigate. We're not, law enforcement. They do the investigations. If we get calls about suspected abuse, we obviously refer it to the proper channels and get the proper information, and assist the family and assist the caller, obviously. But we cannot investigate the abuse ourselves. So we do try to keep that in mind with everybody. Now, I think that is all that I have. Again, I feel like I did talk for a long time, so I do want to make sure that I do wrap this up, because unfortunately, we are running out of time, and I want to make sure that our staff, if there are any other questions, I want to make sure that we get those questions answered through our comment section or through private messages, things like that. And then of course we'll put this all up, and we want to make sure that we also plug and advertise um, that RGB Strong is having a trivia night. Guys, we talk about all this information, and it's all very, very, very important. But, with our community, we want to make sure that you are engaged with us. And one of the ways that we get engaged with each other is through, different events. And we don't always want to, perceive and give out um, this idea that we're an agency where all we talk about is this, all we talk about is that. We want to talk about all this information and give as much information away as possible, but we also want to engage in our community in positive ways. Unfortunately, this year has relegated us to only digital and only online and only virtual. But once we're all back as a community, we're out there, we're at community events, and we're trying to have fun with our community and engage with our community as much as possible. And one big way that we're doing that is through RGB Strong and their amazing, work. They're hosting. Let me see. There you go. They're hosting a trivia night for us. It's a Friends trivia night for Monica's house and Maggie's house. Please, reach out to them, reach out to us to get more information. It's going to be a super fun night, April 24th. Yeah, that's April 24th at 7 p.m. Make sure to be there, guys. Make sure to help us out. Absolutely anything helps. You see on this bottom corner right here, you see our Cash App for donations. We are taking donations again, guys. As a nonprofit agency, we rely heavily on our community, and this year our fundraisers did take a huge hit, and so a lot of the expected funds that we were expecting from these fundraisers didn't quite come, to fruition. So we rely on these fundraisers to conduct our services, like, our therapy services, our community outreach services, our educational services, things like that. We have, some grants, but not everything is covered. So we do rely on our community. So please, reach out to us, reach out to RGB Strong. Um, your comments, we'll go ahead and answer them as well as we can and as detailed as we can in the comments section. But we do have to wrap up, guys. I'm sorry, I can ramble forever. I'm really bad at this, but um, again, my name is Gabriel Garcia. I'm here with the Children's Advocacy Center of Cameron and Willacy County. We will see you all next week. We're having these every Wednesday, okay? So we will see you guys. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you.